got a really spirited middleweight championship title fight affair between Austin Ammo Williams and Carlos Adames. Adames successfully, in pretty dominant fashion, defends the WBC middleweight title, and right now is solidifying his status as the best middleweight in boxing right now. In conjunction with Janabek being stripped of one of his titles, he may be stripped of both at the end. He's a little disgraced right now for popping hot heading into a fight. And so now Adames stands at the top of this division with that WBC title. It was a violent, clinical, precision kind of performance from Adames. Very technical, excellent head movement, excellent offense, went to the body, not nasty, sharp, straight right hands, uppercuts, the whole punch placement. If there's one thing to nitpick, it's that he doesn't always keep his foot on the gas. Maybe if he did in some spots, puts a few more combinations together, this fight would have ended. But we got to give a lot of credit to Ammo Williams for why this didn't end inside the distance. There was times midway through the fight in the sixth round and on where it looked like he was getting broken down, debilitating body shots, breaking him down. And the kid pulled through. Raheem, by the end of the night, I was standing in my in-laws' living room giving an applause for the violent display by Adames and the absolute fortitude given by Ammo Williams. I really enjoyed that fight. What's your thoughts?
I love that. Well, this is a world title fight, so this ain't no mid-level or club fight. It ain't one of these just uh contender fights where you wanted somebody to break through. No, it's a legitimate world title fight, and so it should be respected as such. But with that said, it's not superstars in this fight. This ain't the kind of fight that people are talking about in the street or texting you about. You got to kind of be into boxing to care that this fight even happened. And the fact that fights like that, without the hype, without the big names, on any given Saturday, are delivering like this, like what we saw from Pro Box last week, has me absolutely at the top of my appreciation for the sport and the fighters who fight this sport. This is one of those weekends where you're just like, oh man, again? Are we going to get this entertained again? I was not entering this fight as impressed with Adames, right? I'm like, okay, let's see. Let's see what happens. I'm like, I don't know how entertaining this guy is going to be, which Adames is going to show up. The layoff, I was not sure if we were going to see a lackluster performance. I thought Williams, honestly, I thought Williams was going to put more pressure on him than ultimately he was able to do. What I saw in the first round, I thought would possibly carry at least to the second half of the fight. Now, as fast as the first round started, as much pressure as Williams was putting on him and relying on his quickness and speed and punch volume, anybody knows that it's a very rare fighter that can keep that pace up for 12 rounds. But that's the kind of performance, if you can do, that makes you a world champion. That's how you legitimately beat a guy like Adames as a younger fighter, a hungry fighter with that kind of speed and being able to keep that volume of punches going. That's what could make you a star in the division and win you your first world title. That's how you should have to win it, by doing something that impressive. Of course, Williams was not able to do that ultimately. I thought, second half of the fight, he was fighting in spots. He was like starting maybe first 20 seconds, 30 seconds, digging deep, going for it, and then backing off. I think that was 100% just because he didn't have enough gas in the tank to go 3 minutes at that pace. And so he just was trying to maybe get a knockout or hurt Adames with one of those combinations. He's faster than Adames. His combination punches is effective. And he is faster. He's just not as consistent. And his combination punches were what was working. I thought if he had been able to continuously do that, he would have been able to win this fight. The problem was that he had zero head movement. Like zero. Like he was there to be hit with a double right. A double right. That might be the most disrespectful combination in boxing. A lead double right, not set up by the jab and then ding ding. No, he's hitting you double right off the lead. That's crazy, bro. Once that happens, you gotta go back to the corner and be like, what the fuck were we even working on? Why am I here? I mean, so once I saw that landing, I was like, oh, this kid's in a lot of trouble if he can't get out of the way of that. The defense was just, I mean, without head movement, the defense is just not there. And it was Adamas really, it wasn't like he had great head movement, but he had enough. He could get off the line and he would make Williams miss. And that really was enough to make the difference. I saw Adamas kind of chopping down trees. He was effective with his punches. I liked his punch selection. I saw you make a face. Maybe you disagree. I didn't think he was like impressively fast. He was it was for him was more timing than speed. And Williams had the speed advantage, but he didn't have the gas tank. He didn't have the engine to press like that the whole fight. And if he had had that, and if he had moved his head a little bit, not been right there for any punch Thomas wanted to throw, maybe we see a different fight. But that's the difference between world champion pedigree and a contender who's trying to make his first world title. You saw why Adamas is champion.
Well, I thought the head movement was excellent enough that it didn't allow Williams to do what you said would bring him the most success, and that's press him back. Is every time the guy's getting underneath you, getting underneath a shot or two, and Williams, he would have been better off at times staying behind his jab. And I thought he responded well to that first double right hand knockdown, and he closed that round strong. That was the one time his left hand did something to the legs and the knees of Adamas. He buckled him for a minute in that same round. Third round, I thought he boxed well behind his jab. Then he gets a low blow in the fourth round, and he has a lapse of focus. And Sergio Mora noted this, and he started talking to people out in the audience, started talking to whoever was there, and then they resume the action. The jab fades for the rest of the round. He gets pieced up, and then Adamas has a great fifth round. But I made a face because I think Adamas does have good speed, and it's funny. This reminds me of talks we'd have 10 plus years ago. We get into the real nitty gritty about who's fast and who's not, and I'd be like, because you'd compare someone like Miguel Cotto's speed to Manny Pacquiao, and you'd be like, Cotto's not fast, and I go, no, Cotto is fast. It's just Pacquiao's faster, and then you're like, well, there's fast and not fast, Sean.
You would make the distinction between fast and quick, and we would argue about that shit for hours.
Right, right.
That would be the problem.
Right.
You'd be like, no, Cotto's fast, Pacquiao's quick. I'm like, oh my God, here we go. But
I would just say, look, Pacquiao's faster, Floyd's faster, but Cotto's fast too. And you're like, I think what you were getting at is you're like, well, at the level we're talking about, he's not the fast guy. Okay, like
yes, that sounds like me. That sounds
right,
like
right. So, but I think I agree. It's more the placement and the timing of Adamas. The reason I made a face is I don't think there's any real gap in speed. I think Ammo's a little bit more explosive. I know what you mean, but Adamas is plenty explosive too, and combined with superior timing and placement and accuracy and punch selection and and better technique, he shortens up his punches. Ammo struggles to shorten up his punch. That's why he couldn't. That's why Adamas didn't have to worry about a right hook that much, getting checked by a hooker. Basically, that big, long left hand that is powerful and is dangerous and can be chaotic, and sometimes the kid's athletic. He will put some combinations together. But basically, if I watch out, if I don't let that left hand catch me and it's telegraphed a little bit, I'll be all right. And that's why a few times Ammo did let rip some combinations he did well. But yeah, I think Ammo, the head movement getting underneath meant he couldn't press. He was forced to take a step back with Adamas getting low, getting underneath, and had to stay on his jab and he couldn't press him that much. Adamas had intelligent aggression. And one point I want to make when you were talking about are we going to get this every weekend and how it wasn't a big fight. I mean, they fought in front of like 500 people in Orlando, right? But I'm about to give a hell of a compliment to this fight and to this broadcast. And I mentioned that Mannix and Mora in particular and Grisham, they're getting better, man. They're gelling together. Sergio's really shining on these. He's really coming into his own. And Mannix too. And I think that, you know what this felt like, Raheem? This felt like a boxing after dark.
Hey, okay.
That's quite the compliment, right? Like this felt like a boxing after dark, man.
That's a good analysis. That is true. That is exactly what that felt like. Yeah. It's one of those fights that really, because of what's at stake, it should be a bigger fight. You should have more fanfare because of the Williams coming into, potentially anyway, coming into his own on the night, challenging a a champion who's been out, coming off a draw, maybe vulnerable. The narrative is there. Maybe it's Williams' night and everybody's out of their chair. Can't believe the kid's on his way. All of these things that could happen should be enough to get the fanfare and get the attention for a world title fight, but it just isn't. So that goes on HBO After Dark because all that stuff is in there. The fans just don't care enough to make it primetime boxing. And here we go, in the middle of the night, texting each other out of our chairs at our relative's house, talking about what a great night we had. The counterpunching I want to get to because, you talked about Adames' head movement and his ability to make Williams miss and then be effective. But it's head movement, counter punching, punching him back. Like I think that's how he was backing him up. And the reason he's able to back him up like that is because he's so easy to hit. So if Adames was able to move his own head, make it a little complicated, because he was trying to catch and shoot. Like I know you like the catch and shoot. That's a good, but you cannot exclusively catch and shoot because eventually a fighter with any kind of punch will punch through your catching, will wear you down. I think that is what really Adames was able to do to Williams and why Williams ultimately was getting battered in there because even though he was catching, his counters came less and fewer and less and fewer because he started to get battered while he was catching. And he was catching everything. Catching should be the second option if you can't slip. And then you catch and return and make the fighter think about throwing punches. But Adames never had to think about whether or not he wanted to throw a punch because he knew the punch was going to land somewhere and you can retain your energy if you're not missing. And so Williams is losing energy missing, getting countered. Then he does really press the gas. He has success, but he's like pedal to the metal. So he gasses out in the same round, inside the first minute, and then has to survive and again survive without making Adames miss. That's a difficult way to fight a fight. I don't know if that's because he wasn't trained properly to have the right kind of stamina to get through a fight the way he wanted to fight it, or if you can just accredit Adames early with taking it out of him. Maybe sometimes, low blows, you don't stop for 5 minutes, you don't take a point, you just go on, and you assume that the fighter should just be able to fight at the same clip. But a low blow is illegal for a reason, and any man in here knows how difficult it can be to come back from something if it really does hurt you. It gets into your abdominals, it slows your feet down, makes you harder to breathe. Like, that's enough sometimes to take it out of your leg, which is why a lot of times these accidental low blows, and I'm certainly not suggesting that's what happened last night, but sometimes, a lot more times than fighters will admit, they hit a guy low to slow him down. They know they can get away with one good one in the breadbasket, and they do exactly that because there's too much action on the feet. I always have said, I wish that boxing, while people want the referee to stay out of it, I wish penalties would be penalized early and often to get any kind of fouls out of the way, or at least get a point for the other fighter, get the point deducted if a foul that is effective is landed. With all that said, the difference really, I think, is just one guy knew exactly what he had to do and was able to execute that, and Adames, and the other guy knew exactly what he could do, but wasn't able to do it. And that was Williams' problem. He knew what he had to do and what would work, and it did work every time he did it. He just couldn't execute that for 3 minutes of 12 rounds.
Yeah. And to the point about his conditioning, the body work will do that. He was doubled over a number of times in this fight where you could visibly see his body wincing at the body work. Well placed shots too by Adames. And I think and also he doesn't have the craftiness to take that sophisticated walk when you want to slow things down and pace yourself in the middle of the 3 minutes of the fight around. So I think Adames, between this performance and Shiraz, which has aged like fine wine, seeing the monster that Shiraz looks like at 168 now, after Shiraz, what he did to Berlanga, and I know Berlanga's Berlanga, but it was like, damn, this guy who was once 154, not even 6 feet tall, a lot of people thought you beat that guy just about a year ago. That was impressive for Adames. And his head movement was even better against Shiraz because it had to be. And now you couple it with this dominant performance, and Adames' stock has really gone up in the last 13 or so months. I can't believe I covered his only loss to Patrick Teixeira, who's not on his level. He gassed out. He was sucking wind in the second half of that fight. That was years and years ago. I can't believe he ever lost to Patrick Teixeira, but he's a much better fighter now, and he needs to fight more often, at least twice a year instead of once a year. And he deserves a big fight. And he's talked about going to 68 after. I think that's a shame. All the fun is at 154. 160, dearth of talent. Janibek is in flux right now after popping hot for something. And Arislandi Lara and him, I would like that fight, but they're both with PBC. They share Ishmael Salas. It's not a particularly big fight. I think it should happen, so of course it won't. And then so I wish he could get down to 154. He said he makes 160 comfortably. He's not really a big middleweight. The actions at one, he's talking about 68, Raheem. I prefer him to fight some of the star junior middleweights. I don't think any of those guys would be in a rush to fight. He's in a tough spot right now where he's good enough to fight anyone. And Raheem, if you didn't see it already, I'll send you the link after this chat we're having. Go watch his 3-round war with Terrence Crawford at Gleason's gym. He absolutely gave as good as he got. And Terrence Crawford is a psycho because he was 140 pounds at the time. And Adames said after the fight, nobody comes after me. Nobody can make me fight off my back foot. The last time I saw someone make him fight on his back foot was Terrence Crawford at 140 pounds in Gleason's gym. So that sparring session is aging like fine wine too. That is becoming kind of a legendary sparring session that's a required essential watch for all hardcores. Anyway, this is the last of it for me, and then you take us out. He deserves a big fight. I don't know if he's going to get one. The Jesus Ramos fight is a good fight. Remember the kid who just put hands on Shane Mosley Jr.? That's the interim champion. That's a good fight. But yeah, he's in that tough gray area where he's really good. He could fight with anybody, but he's not a name like that.
Yeah, I'd love to see him unify. I'd love to see these, champions fight each other. You're absolutely right. He deserves that. But I'm honestly more interested in where Williams goes from here. I'm very curious as to what it was that was falling short in there because I put the question out. Well, was he not trained properly to have the engine to do what he could have done to win the fight? Because we saw that would have won him the fight. I truly believe that. I mean,
Kevin Cunningham's going to kick your ass, Raheem.
Well, hold on. Let me finish because I know Kevin, and I think he'll appreciate what's coming next, which is that while I have to question if that is part of the reason that Williams couldn't execute because he couldn't because the gas wasn't there. But we're not in the gym. From what we can see, the corner work was excellent. He was being told the right things. The game plan was correct. Kevin had the confidence to tell his fighter to do what we said to do, and this is what it is in case you forgot. So if he has that confidence to tell him that, he already knows what he's doing, it's working, well, why shouldn't he expect his fighter to be able to execute? That is either down to the fighter on the night not having it, but we know that Williams has the heart. He didn't come in there to lay down or quit. He tried it right there in the 11th and 12th, but he didn't have the engine. So why not? Did he not do the running? We don't know. When he's on his own, did he not do the extra round? While he was training for this, did he give his all in preparation? Did he overtrain? Is there something in the gym that can be rectified that allows him to fight at the pace that he fought in the first round and that he fought in spots later in the fight so that he could keep, okay, to ask him to fight that 12 rounds like the first is a massive ass. You're a superstar. You're one of the anomalies in the sport that become a legend if you're able to do that. All right, I'm not asking that. What I am saying is if you can do that for a majority of the rounds, if you can do that and then find your spots to rest and then have the engine to start again and press again so that you don't give your opponent time to rest and recover and get his own offense off, that's a world champion type of performance if you can do that. And I think that the talent that we saw from Williams, the heart that we saw from him, the hunger, the desire, the commitment to win, the refusal to quit, the get up off the canvas early and fight for another 10 rounds means that he's got the medal that a world champion needs,
Hmm.
but now he has to have the execution that a world champion must have. He has to fill that single box with a check mark which says I've got the engine to execute the plan. I suspect that there is something going on in the training, and I'm going to put it down to Williams that wasn't exhausted, if that's the right word. I
Teddy
think
Atlas thinks he's an overtrainer, Raheem, because you mentioned it could be overtraining. Teddy Atlas heading into the fight says he believes, judging this kid from afar, that he's actually an overtrainer, not a kid you
no.
struggle to get his road work done.
Okay, so you're right. I did mention that as a
Mhm.
possibility. That looked like what it could be. Because if you have the energy, even for 30 seconds in the 12th round, to fight the way that he did, and going into the 12th and the 11th, it's in there. It's just how do you access it and how do you maintain it? And maybe he did overtrain. There's something going on there that needs to be corrected. And when I say exhausted, that's the right word. Was he exhausted in training camp or did he not exhaust some element of training? Rest and recovery is as important as the running and the punch bag and the mitt work and every bit of building. Rest is as equally a component to having a successful camp as work is. Especially at that age, you shouldn't be you shouldn't be exhausted like that. And I really enjoyed the corner work from Kevin. So I believe that the game plan was there, and I think Kevin was motivating his fighter, saying, "You remember when he was like, hey, you won that round, right? You know, he
Mhm.
said, you hurt him, right? You hurt him. You tell your fighter that to keep him from being discouraged. He had not long since just gotten up off the canvas. He was fighting back. He's telling his fighter that you hurt him. To me, was saying, this is working, right? You know what we're doing, what we came here to do can get it done, right? We'll keep doing that. And then late in the fight, he told him to dip to the side and shoot the uppercut. You can't really do that if you're exhausted, and also that opens you up to all kind of counter punching. But when told exactly what to do, what to execute, he had success doing that as well. So
Mhm.
it's frustrating because they had the game plan, he just didn't have the engine to execute it, and that's fixable. That's fixable.
I feel
I
it's
want
more
to
the
see where
craft than
Williams
the
goes from here.
conditioning, Raheem.
Hmm?
I feel it's more craftiness than conditioning, but that's just me.
How do you mean? How do you mean?
I think it's more his savvy, his IQ, his skill set than it is the engine. I think if those things, if you're making a miss sometimes, you have something more on the back end. But when you're getting hit with clean shots, when you don't really know how to feint and take that sophisticated walk to control the pace at times when you need a breather, and all you can do is just kind of retreat and get cornered and then have to take more shots. I think that's what takes meter out of the tank, fuel out of the tank. And so I think it's more that than it is. You could be in tremendous shape, but if you're eating clean body shots over 12 rounds, if you don't know how to do those little things I mentioned at this level, at the championship level, then a well-seasoned, violent, technical pro like Adames is gonna take pounds of flesh out of you, and only you can't overcome that even with a lot of road work. That's just me.
You can't overcome with a lot of road work, but to your point, Kevin did say, "Hey, you're backing off."
Yeah,
When he said when it's working,
yeah, he
you're
couldn't sustain.
you're,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you're
Those
backing off.
spurts. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, when I say road work, the reason I believe that you can overcome that with road work is not because of the road work, but because if you can either punch your opponent off or you can make him miss. You can punch Adamas off. If he keeps that pace up, if he keeps that output going, you're not eating those body shots like that. You're not eating. And granted, not moving your head, being there to hit, being there to be hit is a very difficult thing to overcome if you're in there with a seasoned, fighter who can execute.
But
So
those
that's a
barrages are
oh,
sprints. You know what I mean? He's not able to jog his way through a round and then pick his sprints. He's
that's what
sprinting,
I'm saying now.
and then
If
yeah,
he can jog and
right.
sprint, which requires an engine, he has the skill set to do it. He's shown that. So you just got to be able to keep doing it. There's the jog. That's what's missing. That's what I'm saying. Are you running? Are you not running? Hey,
Are you
yeah.
running too much? What's going
You
on?
ran
Yeah,
too
yeah.
much? Yeah, exactly. Something's that. Why are the legs not working? Why are we not jogging right now? And when he doesn't jog, he sits like on a beanbag and just gets pummeled,
Yeah.
which ain't gonna win you no fights at this level.